7. Old Diason rode a changed man. Never in his life had he considered himself a champion of the people, a transformer of the world. He had been content to be a farmer, tilling the soil, raising his crops, and seeing to his animals. How short-sighted, how simple that all seemed now. He did not question his almost overnight shift in thought and purpose any more than he not questioned the force swelling within him. It had happened, and that was all that mattered. A great part of the change in old Dyson could be attributed to the women riding behind him. When he listened to Lila, everything made sense. Everything seemed possible. Old Dyson was grateful not only for her presence, but her knowledge and experience. She knew the world outside of Sarum, especially the pitfalls and other traps. She also understood the yearning of the masses to no longer be subject to the material machinations of the mage clans or corrupt sects such as the Trian or the Cathedral. With her at his side, old Dyson felt as if he could do anything. It was all planned out, at least in his mind. Ride into the vast city and seek a place in the great public square, where many would-be prophets came to preach. However, where they would be looked upon as fools and madmen, matters would be different for old Dyson. He could show the people the path, the gift that he offered. They would see that he was no charlatan. Once his first audience saw the truth, the word would spread like wildfire everywhere. He glanced to his right, where his brother rode. Mendelin watched the path ahead, just like the others, but old Dyson knew that his sibling was one person in the party who did not fully appreciate what he intended. Mendelin had been hesitant from the beginning, bringing up suggestions and reasons for caution, but Lila had countered those concerns with strong words of her own, further empowered by her tragic tale. Caution and hesitation only allowed those who would be jealous of old Dyson's gift to act. Innocence might suffer, then, as it happened with the noblewoman and her family. No, old Dyson was absolutely certain of his course. He loved his brother, but if Madeline continued to fail to see things as they should be, then old Dyson would have to deal with him somehow. It would not look good for his own blood to seem less than an absolute believer in what old Dyson was doing. The farmer grimaced. What sort of thoughts were these? His brother meant everything to him. Only Medlin's presence had kept him from losing his mind when the rest of their family had perished. Shame filled old Dyson. He could not imagine life without his brother. He'll come to understand, the older son of Domes assured himself. Medlin will come to understand. He had to. They rode that day, and the next toward their destination without so much as meeting a soul. To old Dyson, life in Sarum seemed more and more merely a bad dream as anticipation of the city grew. Achilles went ahead to scout the way, something that old Dyson felt unnecessary, considering his power, but he did not argue against. The archer did not return to the party until well after they had made camp, bringing with him a pair of good-sized hares for food. Sighted smoke far in the distance just before sunset, Achilles remarked, giving the hares to Mendelin and Serafina. A town, maybe. With a smile he added, perhaps somewhere where we could get a good ale. Mendelin closed his eyes for a moment, then said, Partha. I think that's a town in this region is called Partha. One of Mendelin's favorite pastimes when in Cyrus's establishment was to listen to where travelers came from and to inspect the trader's collection of maps. In regard to the latter, Mendelin had an almost perfect memory. A good-sized place? Old Dyson asked with growing interest. Larger than Tulsum, I believe, yes. On a direct route between the great city and the largest seaports. Partha sounded ideal to old Dyson in more ways than one. It had occurred to him, somewhat belatedly, to test himself on a simpler place than Kedgen. A few days and Partha would remove any doubt, especially from Mendelin, about Eldyson's ability to show people the gift. So far, despite the fact that each night Eldyson tried to show them, only he and Lila seemed able to draw upon whatever it was within. Seraphina appeared on the edge of making the leap, but something held her back. As for Achilles, he was content with his skills as a hunter, which for the first time, Eldyson believed drew in a different manner from the same source as the farmer's abilities. Certainly Achilles had always been a very, very fortunate hunter. There was still hope there, but long term. As for Mendelin, he seemed furthest of all from realizing his own abilities. Eldyson did not understand why, having assuming that his brother would be most adept other than himself. Lila had, the night before, come up with what appeared to be the best answer so far. As with Achilles, it was very likely Mendelin's own personality that held him back. But that was a matter that could also wait, at least for the moment. The town offered many new options. Partha, he murmured. Lila leaned close, then almost nuzzling his ear. Eldyson did not miss Seraphina's brief look of dejection at this. We should really continue straight to the city, the noble woman whispered. The sooner the greatest number of people can hear and see you, the sooner the transformation of the world can begin. Yes, you're right. Eldyson returned immediately, seeking her point and wondering why he had even bothered thinking of a tiny, insignificant place such as Partha. Straight to the city. That's best. Achilles looked disappointed, but nodded. Seraphina's face was a mask. Mendelin appeared perturbed, but Eldyson was used to seeing his brother so. No one protested. That was all that was important. Still, Eldyson needed to test himself. He finally arose from Lila's grip. Sari, would you come with me? Her eyes momentarily brightened. Then the mask returned. She also rose. Of course. Of course. Eldyson, Lila called. I won't be long, he assured her. The blonde woman turned her gaze to the fire and said nothing. Taking Seraphina's hand, Eldyson led her past an uncomprehending Achilles and Mendelin. He guided the trader's daughter into the forest until the light of the camp could no longer be seen, then turned her to face him. Seraphina waited expectantly. Eldyson considered his words carefully before saying, I'm sorry again about Cyrus, Sari. I'm so very sorry. Eldyson, He put a finger to her lips. Sari, you may have died because of me. She pulled back. No! Lowering her voice, Seraphina added, No, Eldyson. I've thought about it a lot while we've been traveling. Perhaps the storm came from you. I still don't know. But you never meant harm. Brother Matthias was condemning you as if a heretic. If you somehow caused the storm, then it was because he forced it on you. You were only defending yourself. He looked at her in surprise. Hearing this from one he knew who had cared deeply for her father and had long respected both major sects, Eldyson felt tremendous relief. Until then, he had not realized how much he had still worried inside about how the trader's death had affected her. Sari, even thinking that, why didn't you return home instead of following me into the unknown? Your brothers will fear for you. I'm old enough to find my own way in the world, she said with her old defiance, clapping her hands on her hips. Seraphina added, Phil and the rest will know what I did, and they'll leave me to my own actions, as always. She said it was such finality that old Dyson could only smile ruefully. Even now, he would not dissuade her. Besides, it still comforted him to have her around, just as it did to have his brother and Achilles. Alright, I had to ask. I had to know. I won't say any more. But I must say something, if you permit. Once again, Cyrus's daughter became the odd follower. You don't need my permission. Well, Dyson, I understand what you do, and believe wholeheartedly in it, she cleared up. But perhaps Mendelin's concern has some merit. I know Lila says to ride straight to the city, but he frowned. Is this about Lila, Sari? Although she shook her head, you could tell that it both was and was not. Old Dyson doubted that Seraphina could separate matters. No. I mean, Old Dyson? I've spoken with missionaries from both the temple and the cathedral, and not all of them are like Brother Machilius. I do not think that there's some good in them. Heartily, the son of Demeans returned, growing stone-faced. Memories of the Master Inquisitor raced through his head. Seraphina paused, visibly seeking a different tack. It's just that I know Lila has experienced far more than us, but not everything she says is what we should do. Her words only made old Dyson defensive. I listen to Lila just as I listen to all of you. It just happens that her advice has made the most sense to me more often. More like all the time. Enough! Old Dyson felt an unreasoning anger rising, but managed to smother it. He could see no reason for continue with the conversation. It had been his notion to clear the air before it between them in regards to her father, and that had been done. Obviously, old Dyson thought putting to rest any emotions Seraphina had toward him would take longer. He would have to be patient. Yes, patient. Reaching up, he placed one hand on her head as he had done when she had only been a child. Sari, he whispered, you said you believe in what I've become, right? She nodded, her eyes still reflecting her thoughts on the previous subject. I know that what's been awakened in me is trying to stir within you, too. But so far, it's not been able. I've tried, the young woman insisted. His hand went to her shoulder, which he patted. I know. Let me try to help guide it to awakening. Take my hands. When she had obeyed, old Dyson continued. If this works, it will better help me understand how to show others once we reach Kejin. But what are... Ah! Lalo had suggested to him that it was their closeness, their melding to one, that stirred the latent force within her. Obviously, old Dyson could not share in that same manner with others, especially Seraphina, but he could try to come as close as possible. He focused on the woman before him, trying to see her in his heart, in her soul. He tried to let the power flow from him into those places, into the hope of igniting the flame. It certainly felt to him as if he had a warmth entered his hands. A warmth he seemed to feel spreading from his companion. Seraphina, in turn, began to breathe rapidly, and her eyes now looked up to the point where old Dyson could see only the whites. To his surprise, old Dyson felt stirring from her direction, something akin to what had lurked within himself. He focused on Serentina and was able to verify that it came from within the woman. It was a slight in comparison, but the more he reached out to it, the stronger, the more awake it became. He was awed by his own swift success. All had been correct again. Old Dyson had managed to stir to life within Serentina the same force. Without warning, her body began to quiver uncontrollably. The whites were still the only thing visible of her eyes. She let out a small moan. Old Dyson grew worried. Serentina had just passed a mighty threshold. Although the enormity of it would not be evident for some time, still it behooved him now to stop and let her move ahead on her own. Too quickly, and something might happen to her. As old Dyson released her hands, the trader's daughter let out a gasp and fell toward him. He caught her in his arms, holding her while she recovered. It felt like, she finally managed, feels like, but words failed her after that. I know, he finally replied, hoping to comfort her. Serentina suddenly stiffened. She pulled away from old Dyson as if he were a leper, then rushed towards the direction of the camp. Old Dyson stood baffled. He expected something akin to euphoria. Lila had told him that she had felt. Serentina vanished among the trees and shadows. Old Dyson, still confused, stared after her for a few seconds. More before starting back himself. He was certain that he had done everything right. Why then had she reacted so? When at first he stepped back into the camp, he saw no sign of her. Concerned, old Dyson started to ask his brother, but Mendelin mutely shook his head, then nodded toward his right. There, half obscured by the dark, lay Serentina. She had one of the blankets procured from the cathedral saddlebags around her and faced away from the camp. Old Dyson took a step toward her, only to have Lila come up and gently take his arm. "It would be best to leave her," the noble woman whispered. He opened his mouth to reply, then clamped it shut again. It seemed that, even with all that he had gained, there were some things that old Dyson would never understand. Come the morning, Serentina acted as if nothing had happened. Yet old Dyson could, with his own burning power, sense that the force within her had grown stronger. She evinced no sign of this, though, and he finally decided that he would let her choose when to accept her gift. It was enough to know that she did wield it, that he would be able to guide others toward the same direction, and with practice, the effort would surely grow quicker and easier. They rode under an overcast sky, but old Dyson at one point amusedly wondered if he could clear. He did not try, though, for fear that, if he did indeed work, he would only be announcing his presence to those who might wish him to never make it to the city. Lila had suggested to him that it would be better if he waited until Kejen before revealing himself so. Then she said it would be too late for them to hide the truth from anyone. Despite the continuous gloom, it did not rain, and so, once more, they made good time. They only changed the direction in which they had to look for. But Mendelin's calculations and Lila's confirmation that they would see a similar hint of the great city in 3 or 4 more days at the utmost. The five finally also crossed paths with other travelers, in this case a wagon heading the opposite direction. The driver, a bearded elder with trade dealings at the seaports, greeted the party warily at first. His apprentice, a gangly, carrot-haired youth with watery eyes, anxiously kept his hand near a well-worn sword at his side. As he still wished to reach Kajan as soon as possible, old Dyson decided that there was no use in revealing what he was to the pair. Instead, he sought from the trader news concerning the state of affairs in the legendary city. The mage clans have a truce going on at the moment, declared the stout figure as he lit a long clay pipe. It'll last us as well as the others, which to say, not long at all. Possibly even over already. The nobles, they watch and wait while they plot to their own advantage, and the clans let them keep some control over the city's functions so that they can free themselves to figure out how to get around the truce. He chuckled darkly. So, one might say all is pretty well as always in Kejin. His words verified for Eliason the importance of what Lila had said about heading directly there rather than turn to Partha or any other lesser settlement. Old Diason graciously thanked the trader, then led the others on. They settled for the night on the bank of a sedate river coursing along the region. Here, the line between woods and jungle blurred some. For the first time, old Dyson came to understand just how small the forested region was in comparison with the great jungles said to be covering much of the realm. He had even heard traders pausing at Sarum remark that it seemed that the jungles were gradually swallowing up all else. Obviously, that could not be the truth, but eyeing the odd, almost unnatural shift in environment, old Dyson could not help still wonder a little. He had hoped that the day's ride would ease the tension between him and Sarantina, but the raven-haired woman yet again found reason to be away from him. It is best to let her work it out herself, Lila finally whispered to him as she nuzzled his cheek. She will come to accept matters. You will see. Nodding, old Dyson forced his attention to more important matters. Now that he was so near the city, his nerves had begun to act up. He admitted this to Lila, who suggested that he retire early and let the rest of them see to things. You must be at your peak come the day we enter. Go, sleep. When there is food ready, I will bring it to you. She kissed him again, then departed. Old Dyson immediately followed her good advice. The ground beneath was soft, and the night warmer than previous. A short nap, he decided, was indeed the right thing for him. As usual, Lila knew best. He could not imagine a future without her. It was as if old Dyson had always known her. With those comforting thoughts, he drifted off. Sarantina knew that she had come to grips with her conflicting emotions concerning old Dyson. She believed in the goodness of what he had become, believed it was enough not even to consider himself at fault of her father's terrible fate. But at the same time, she could not separate what he was from what he had once been. The man whom she had loved as no one else, and who now loved another, a woman he had met only a short while before. "We need more wood for the fire," Mandolin commented, seizing on the opportunity to be even more by herself. Seraphina quickly replied, "I'll go and gather it. You make certain that the fire doesn't die in the meantime." She slipped out of the camp and began collecting small broken branches. The search required little attention, which allowed her mind to wander to less confusing and less painful subjects. But Cyrus's daughter had gathered only roughly half an armful when a prickling sensation on her neck made her look over her shoulder. "Lila!" The presence of the noblewoman out here so startled Seraphina that she dropped several pieces of wood. Startled in disbelief at the blonde figure, the other woman strode up to her with footsteps as silent as a cat. "Forgive me," Lila murmured. "I did not mean to scare you." What are you doing out here? I don't need any help with the wood. I wanted to speak with you. That's all." "Speak with me?" The trader's daughter feared that she knew the subject. There's no need." I'll move closer. "But there's every need, dear Seraphina. Every need." As she stared deep into the other woman's eyes, she set a soft hand on her arm. "You are special to old Dyson, and thus special to me. I want all his friends to be comfortable around me. I want you to think of me not just as his love, his future mate, but as your friend as well." If Lila expected her words to comfort Seraphina, it had the opposite effect. An unreasoning distress filled Seraphina, and the words love and mate rang in her head over and over. She felt utter shame that Lila knew how jealous she had been. Seraphina struggled against her swirling emotions, insisting to herself that they were exaggerated. But in the end, they still proved too much for her. Eyes tearing, she whirled from Lila's grip. The kindling fell unnoticed from her arms. Seraphina ran, not caring which direction she headed. All that mattered was to be away from everyone who knew what she had been thinking. Tree limbs snagged at her clothing. Seraphina stumbled several times on the uneven ground. She tripped once across an upward turned root. None of these impediments caused her to pause and thus possibly regain her wits. Seraphina simply righted herself each time and continued running, while the motion clouded her mind. A silhouetted form stepped out in front of her. Paying it no mind, she kept moving. Only when it seized her in a grip of steel did she start to come back to reality. At which point, she opened her mouth to scream. One gauntleted hand quickly smothered her cry. Seraphina struggled to free herself, but another figure came up behind, securing the trader's daughter. The first figure leaned forward, his hooded form almost ghost-like. "Be silent, girl," he hissed, "or else you must be punished." She began to notice other, similar figures, men in hoods and armor. At first, she took them for Inquisitor guards, then a symbol of breastplate of the foremost momentarily glittered in the moonlight, revealing the familiar triangle symbol of the temple. Seraphina tried to speak, to explain, but her effort garnered her only a swift and painful slap across the face. "Brother Rondo, have a care with the child." The voice was low and smooth, and its kind tone reminded Seraphina of her father. A dark figure atop a monstrosity, huge stallion rode up to where the two men held her. As the tall rider dismounted, the hardened warrior surrounding Serentina released her, then fell down on one knee. Although now not held, she felt a compulsion to follow their example. "Forgive me, Eminence," grunted the one called Rondo anxiously. "Your enthusiasm is commendable. Your tact is in need of work, brother." The gloved figure touched Rondo atop his covered head, then turned his attention back to Serentina. "My child, shiver not so at my coming. I am friend, not fear." Up close, his features became visible. In contrast to his pale skin, he had thick, wavy hair, dark, deep brown. An elegant mustache gave him a regal dignity. His smile, like his tone, reminded Serentina of her father. "I am Malik, High Priest of the Order of Memphis, of this Temple of the Triune," Serentina finished somewhat breathlessly. Instinctively, she bowed her head. "A believer! How delightful!" Malik stretched out a hand to her, which after hesitation the woman took. "And I do apologize for the zealousness of Brother Rondo here. We are all too eager to conclude our quest." As his last words set on Serentina on edge, she instantly recalled everything that had happened in the village, and how the cathedral had immediately condemned Uldiasin without hearing his side. Suddenly, Malik's presence no longer eased her mind. Somehow he must have read that, for the high priest cocked his head and remarked, "But come, my child. I told you I am friend. I sense your withdrawal." Without permission, his hand touched between her breasts. "And I sense also," Malik frowned, "that you are not the one we seek. There is the spark of something within you, but it is too weak." Without meaning to, Serentina blurted, "Uldiasin?" Malik's thick, dark brow rose. "Uldiasin? Is that his name? And you think him the one we seek?" She clamped her mouth shut. Brother Rondo stirred from his kneeling position, but Malik waved him down again. The high priest leaned forward until his face, and especially his eyes, filled Serentina's view. "You are fearful. But why? Unless..." He smiled wide, revealing perfect teeth. "Ah! The cathedral! It surely must be. Inquisitors, no doubt." Still, Serentina said nothing, although his accurate guesswork made her wonder if he could read her thoughts. "The cathedral. Small wonder you should show such distrust. Brother Rondo was there. Not news from one of our messengers of the deaths of not only one of our own, but also a servant of the cathedral as well?" "Aye, Eminence. In the village of Sarum, it was said, the murder of our missionary was especially brutal." Yes. Waving him to silence again, Malik said to Serentina, "And the cathedral did condemn your Uldiasin, did they not?" "Yes," she finally answered, some of her distress fading again. Typical of their ways. They cannot fathom something that they must be rid of. Woe betide the day that the prophet began preaching his blasphemies. The high priest stepped up next to Seraphina, his arm wrapping around her shoulder in a comforting manner. But we are not the cathedral, child. The temple of the Triune was always preached a peaceful resolution to matters. You understand that? Good. I would not have you believing that we come to do as they did. Rather, we are here just to do the opposite. And surely it must be a sign for both you and I that we should meet at this fortuitous moment. You can lead me to where your old Dyson, and then all of our problems will be over. But Seraphina found it hard to think. Her mind suddenly felt as muddled as when Lila had spoken with her. Still, she still recalled something. Old Dyson wanted to go to the city, and he certainly wanted nothing to do with any sect, be it the cathedral or the Triune. No, I can't. Old Dyson wouldn't want me to. Malik's body tensed. Seraphina suddenly felt his arm slide back until his gloved fingers rested near the back of her skull. She felt a painful force there and tried to let out a cry, but her mouth would not work. Neither would her body. Only her mind functioned, but it was now a prisoner in an immobile shell. Shame you would not listen to reason, child, the tall figure remarked in a voice no longer comforting. But you will still lead us to your old Dyson. He looked at the peace warders. To your mounts, hurry! As the men rushed up to their beasts, Malik led Seraphina to his own. Up close, something about the creature put her ill at ease. But her body, subject to the high priest's will, would not let her pull back. Instead, she mounted up in front of her captor, who took the reins with one hand and held her tight with the other. Now, he whispered in her ear, in the same kind tone that he had first used, a tone that Cyrus's daughter knew he used to mock her helplessness. Now, my child, show me the way. Seraphina's left hand rose, pointing unerringly in the direction of the camp. Very good. Very good. Be sure to smile when you see your friend. I would hate to make him uneasy. The corners of her mouth rose. Malik chuckled quietly, then urged as he mounted forward.